What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Hail to the District podcast. I'm Rajan, he's Patrick, and we're doing a belated podcast to run through the 2020 schedule of the Washington Redskins, which officially dropped last Thursday evening. We're recording this on the subsequent Monday. But we figured better late than never in terms of the schedule, considering there isn't much else to talk about, either in the football world or the sports world in general. So given that, to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes, we were talking about this as of last Thursday. And Patrick and I were actually texting back and forth when the schedule first dropped. And let's just say we had very similar outlooks on the season. Pat, I'll let you provide your thoughts on that because, as mentioned, mine were very, very much in line with the statement you kind of came out and made right away.
Yeah, we're going to have another long season. That's the moral of the story. I think I texted you when it came out 4-12. I think that's what I said.
Yeah,
which is improvement shown for the record. We can't be much worse than we were last year.
It's a 33% improvement from last year.
Yeah. Don't sleep on the Skins. The more I've looked at the schedule, the more I've thought about our team, the more, and this is a little different than what you probably expect, I do feel a little better. Only because we really couldn't be any worse than last year, and we won 3 games. So I think, looking at the schedule, I think going into that bye week, I think it's like week 8 or 9.
It's week 8.
Week 8. I think we're kind of going to be middle of the pack. And I know there's a lot of hubbub that Rivera's teams get better later in the year. We might get better later in the year, but we're still not going to win those games. I mean, you got Pittsburgh, San Fran, Seahawks, Panthers, Philly in the year. We're not going to win those games. I actually have us falling at 6-10. I just think that Del Rio and Rivera will somehow figure out a way to get us wins. Now, I said something very similar last year about Jay Gruden because we always ended at 7-9.
Yep.
And maybe it's my Redskins burgundy and gold glasses.
It is.
I think we're going to find a way to win some random games. I still think we'll be 6-10. I think what I care about is what that 6-10 really means. Like if we're 5-5 and we end 6-10 because of injuries, it's one thing. If we're, 5-5 ended 6-10, but Haskins plays really well, it's probably a good year. So I don't want people just to look at the numbers, but I think we fall. 4-12 was my initial reaction, and I think we have too much. Our coaching staff will be good enough to get us to 6, but I think that's the ceiling. I think that's what people need to like. I'm not coming out here saying we're gonna all of a sudden win 9 games to go to the playoffs, because Rivera is on record loosely by basically saying this is going to take a year or 2 to turn around. And I think the free agency signings reflect that. So I got us at 6-10. And it's just people just have to realize we're not going to be that good. They just need to know that now.
I think you made a point about the fact that the free agent signings and Rivera's come out and said this and all of those things. There's a pretty prevailing sentiment among, the Redskins beat reporters, if you really listen to them, and among the beat reporters, the coaches, again, if you really listen to them as well, that this is kind of a tear it down or year one in a multi-year process. Exactly to your point. They know we're not going to be good this year. And I think, they're obviously never going to say that out publicly, but if you read between the lines, it's very much there. I think you made the point that I was going to make, or you made it in part. So I think given the amount of roster turnover, but more importantly, just the coaching staff even getting acclimated with their guys, I am a big believer that that's going to take some portion of the season. And I think in these, I hate saying this over and over again because it just sounds so cliche, but these unprecedented times, the corona-related restrictions that we're all facing right now.
It's actually not cliche because it's real.
Yeah, but I think the team's lost so much time that they would ordinarily need to gel, and for people to get to know each other, for pieces to kind of come together on the individual units, that already takes a long time. There's the old saying among NFL types, a cliche, if you will, that, the NFL season doesn't really even start till 4 games into the season because we've lost so many practices and so many OTAs and things like that as a result of the CBA that you don't really see who a team is until 4 to 6 weeks into the year. I don't believe we're going to see what this team actually looks like or what this team really is until I'm saying 6 to 8 at the minimum, to be completely honest with you. And the bad part of that is not so much that the 6 to 8 weeks is kind of the, wading into the waters or sticking your toe into the water type of thing. It's that week 6 to 8 is, as you alluded to, is really when we get into the teeth of the schedule. Like, as we were saying before we started recording, like the second half of this schedule is absolutely miserable. And I think that's where my perspective is on this, that like, I'm firmly hanging out in 4-12, maybe 5-11 land. I think my final record was 5-11, just to give a teaser there. We'll talk about how we'll get there. But it's mostly because, and I tend to be a little bit of a chicken little when it comes to the schedule. Like, holy shit, there's so many tough games, and like, where are we going to find these wins and things like that? But I mean, if you really look at the way the schedule lies, like, there's very few, if any, like, oh yeah, we got that one. Like, all right, well, at least we got that one on the schedule. And we'll kind of use that as a segue there, right? Like, okay, for the second straight season, we opened up against Philadelphia. I think we opened at the Link last year, but this year it's at home. So we'll do this NFL coach style. We're going to kind of go quarter by quarter, first four, second four, third fourth four games, right? So the first four, it's home versus the Eagles, at the Cardinals, at the Browns, and home versus the Ravens. So yikes on that last fourth game. Let's just start there. Or I mean, let's just, mention that right off the top. But I don't like any of these four games. I'm not comfortable with any of the four, and I'll dive into that, but I want to get your thoughts on that first.
Yeah, before we do this, I'm just going to put one thing on the record. The NFL schedule release that they do is the dumbest thing the NFL does, and that's all I wanted to say. And we'll move on because I think
they made a 3-hour event out of something that shouldn't be an event at all. But I mean, that's the time.
We've known who these teams were since December.
Yep, and it's just the order.
Anyway, yeah, the Ravens game is terrifying. It's talk about home game. Good Lord, it's going to be a Baltimore home game.
It's going to be all purple.
Yeah, it's going to be a purple stadium. The Eagles are interesting to me. This is going to sound kind of asinine, but I don't really fear any NFC East team. It's kind of funny because, like, I know they don't fear us because we're so bad. But, like, an NFC East game, none of those teams are great. And we could sneak one here and there. I'm not saying we're going to beat the Eagles week one. I'm just saying we could sneak in NFC East games. I think Arizona this is a very hard game for me to figure out because, like, part of me is like they might torch us. I mean, that offense is loaded, especially now that they got Hopkins. But the other part of me is like, well, they don't have time to actually practice together. And if the NFL schedule gets tweaked at all, that's probably the game that gets tossed out, which is a small little caveat. The Browns, I think we can beat the Browns. So maybe 1-3, 2-2 if we somehow sneak out a game against the Eagles. But the Ravens are going to torch us, so let's just like toss that game out. I think Arizona probably beats us up because it's on the road too. Because we go home, road, home. I think.
Yep, home, road, home.
I'm going to go 2-2 just based on the sheer fact that nobody can practice right now. And to your point around the first 4 weeks, I don't think any team's going to know what the hell they're doing. So I'm going to go with 2-2, and I'm going to chalk up the Eagles win, which will put DC in a freaking frenzy because it'll be week one.
It's so lathered up.
And I said we'll lose to Arizona. I think we'll beat the Browns just because they're the Browns. And then we'll lose to the Ravens. That's probably a little optimistic. I actually kind of want to say 1-3, but because it is May 11th and I'm eating a lamb chop and I have nothing else to be looking forward to, I'm going 2-2.
So I'm going to steal your 1-3. I'm going to vehemently disagree with you on terms of not fearing any NFC East team. There's one NFC East team in particular, and I'm going to get to
the Cowboys.
I'm going to get to them in a moment, but let's just say it's not the Eagles. And so by process of elimination, you should be able to arrive there. So the one thing I keep looking at with the Eagles, without trying to go too far down the rabbit hole there, is I don't see how the Eagles got better this offseason. Like, I love the
drafted Jalen Hurts.
Exactly. I'm reveling in the schadenfreude of the Eagles fans losing their shit over drafting Jalen Hurts. I mean, I get it at a basic level. Like, conceptually, I get it. I just don't think with the second round pick, that was a luxury they could have really afforded. And I don't know. It was very strange. But I was more thrilled as a Redskins fan that they passed on Justin Jefferson to get Jalen Reagor from TCU. Like, them passing on Justin Jefferson was just like, oh, thank God. He just breathed this big sigh of relief, even though I'll talk about the other team that drafted a wide receiver momentarily. Yeah, they added Darius Slay and Nickel Roby-Coleman, which is fine. I don't see the Eagles getting that much better. Arizona is going to be frisky. They are. I echo your sentiments, and I might even double down on what you're saying. I think Cliff Kingsbury doesn't give a fuck. They've got a couple extra pieces on defense, headlined by Isaiah Simmons. I know he's going to not be awesome right away, but he's going to be awesome in general. I think a lot of Redskins fans, present company excluded, who are like, "Oh yeah, it's Arizona. We can pencil a win there." That's a big mistake. With Cleveland, I don't think we can overstate two things from last year. One, Baker Mayfield spent the entire offseason drinking and getting fat and not giving a shit about football at all. And two, Freddie Kitchens was so overmatched for the job, and that became painfully apparent.
Who's their head coach now? I don't even know.
Kevin Stefanski, Kirk's old boy.
Yeah, I was the Minnesota guy. That's right.
Yeah, right. So it's not like he's, I'm not saying he's the second coming of Bill Walsh or anything, but I think it's just going to be better by the fact that it's not Freddie Kitchens and the inmates weren't running the asylum. Another thing, if there was another third thing that we can't overstate as well, as their line sucked, and they got two really good offensive tackles to fix that part up. I think they addressed the interior as well. So I think they're going to be better than they were last year. Again, people are probably going to look at this and be like, "Oh, Cleveland was terrible last year. We could probably win that." I think we steal one between Philadelphia and Cleveland. I think we drop it against Arizona because that's one of those like, you kind of overlook them games, and I think we get embarrassed there because one, DeAndre Hopkins is awesome, and
he's the best receiver in the NFL.
They'll throw it all over our secondary because again, Kingsbury just doesn't give a shit, and that kind of rains on our parade a little bit. I could legitimately, being completely honest, see us stealing one against the Eagles, but I'm not banking on it. So I guess by process of elimination, I think we take the one against the Browns, even though I don't love that idea. So 1-3 from my first quarter.
So we had the same prediction, except I'm a little more rosy than you.
Yeah, basically. I think that's fair to say. So then moving on to the second quarter, we've got home against the Rams, at the cursed New York Giants, home against the even more cursed Cowboys, the aforementioned Week 8 bye, and then another rare 2 times in 3 games double dip against the Giants, this time at home.
Did you see the Dolphins play the Jets back-to-back?
I did not see that. That is –
yeah, it's very weird. They play the Jets, have a bye, and then they play the Jets again.
That's so absurd. It was weird when that happens when they play a game, like when a team plays a team in Week 17 and then they play them again in the playoffs, and this is even weirder than that. I'll start off. So I have them actually going 2-2 in this quartile, and that may be very optimistic. I just, for the life of me, cannot see us getting swept by the Giants, I don't want to live in a world where we get swept by the cursed, wretched New York Giants. And call me rose-colored in this particular situation, but I'm actually going to say we steal it against the Rams. I think I get the Rams as a little bit of a regression candidate from last year. There's just questions about can they rush the passer, some of their interior offensive linemen. They've only got one corner in Jalen Ramsey. They traded away every asset they have from here on out. Jared Goff is, here today, gone tomorrow in terms of his performances. I'm still not betting against McVay's ability to tear us up in terms of, throwing it all over us. But yeah, I think we can actually steal one against the Rams, and that maybe be really optimistic. And then I'm banking on a split against the Giants, and I'll cover that other team momentarily, but I'll get your thoughts.
Yeah, I have us 2-2 as well. I think the Rams we're almost lockstep here. I promise, if anyone's listening, we've not texted about this.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know what to think about the Rams. I went to the Rams-Seahawks game here in Seattle last year on Thursday night, and it was one of the most incredible games I've ever watched. It was high scoring. Like, both teams looked like juggernauts, and then the Rams just kind of disappeared. They I don't know what – I don't follow the Rams. I don't know if something happened. Like, obviously Gurley wasn't Gurley because of his knees. Goff is, to your point, like, you never really know what you're going to get with them. But they kind of fizzled. I think we can beat the Rams. Goff doesn't scare me. At that point, we're 5 games into the year, and fingers crossed, Haskins has figured out the offense by then. I think we steal one from the Rams. I think we beat the Giants. I almost went 3-1 because of the Cowboys, but CD scared me a little too much, so I decided not to pick a win versus the Cowboys, which sucks, is that I have us losing to the Cowboys twice. But I think we beat the Rams. I think we could go 3-1 because I actually think the Giants might be really bad.
I hope the Giants are really bad.
I think they might be like epically bad. I really hope so. They got Saquon, but like that's about it.
Dave Gettleman is the source of endless amusement for me.
Yeah.
So
I went 2-2 because I know we're going to trip up in one of those two games.
I'll cover the Giants for a second.
Redskins 1-1.
To your point, yes. That's where my head was at. I think we'll drop one against the Giants just because that's just what happens. Like that's what we do. If I'm being nice about the Giants, like I think their offensive line, they fixed that up pretty well, like with starting with Andrew Thomas in the draft. And I think they've just done a good job of upgrading there. They finally got some upgrades at linebacker. They signed James Bradbury to pair with DeAndre Baker, who was their second first-round pick last year. You mentioned Saquon. They're going to ride him into the ground. They're going to let him touch the ball 450 times, which is great. Let him break down as fast as possible. Their receivers or whatever, Darius Slayton, their second-year guy, was quietly frisky last year. They've got pieces on the thing, but I can't get excited about Daniel Jones. I'm sure the rest of the NFL feels that way about Dwayne Haskins, but I'm sorry, Daniel Jones was what he was, and I think they was grossly overdrafted because, as we've talked about before, John Mara is boys with David Cutcliffe, or because Eli Manning was, and therefore John Mara was. When it comes to Dallas, let me be abundantly clear on this, that for me to say anything nice about Dallas, like I would rather say nice things about Al-Qaeda or the Kardashians, who are like in the same sentence for me, than I would about Dallas. And so with that caveat in mind, I'm going to say, to me, the Dallas Cowboys are the best team in the NFC this year. And
in the whole NFC?
In the entire conference. I think the Cowboys are the best team.
Dude, whoa, back up. You think they're the whole best team in the whole NFC?
Best in the whole conference. Hot take, whether you want to come out or not. And again, let me be abundantly clear. I fucking hate Dallas with every fiber of my entire being.
Dude, their defense, they got no defense.
Their front seven is so gross in terms of – see, this is one thing I don't think people – like, and it's weird because this is a time when no one's talking about the Cowboys, maybe because no one's talking about the NFL. But, like, I know these guys are past their prime, but they added Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe to the defensive line. They've already got DeMarcus Lawrence. They've already got Tyrone Crawford. This is a really, really, really good front four. Their linebackers might be the best in the NFC in Sean Lee, whenever he's healthy, Leighton Vander Esch, and Jalen Smith.
Is he still on their team? I know he was a free agent. Did he re-sign with them?
I'm pretty sure he's still there. And again, I think their front seven is ridiculous. I think
they also got mini Sean Lee. What's their superstar linebacker? Brackett. He went to like
Vander Esch?
Boise.
Yeah, Vander Esch and Leighton Vander Esch, who's really good, and Jalen Smith, who is, amazingly recovered. So that front seven, I think, alone, I think their secondary has questions like, Clinton Dix, congratulations. We've had him. There's a reason why he's rotated 3 teams in 3 years, right? Like, I wouldn't get excited there. So I think the secondary is a problem, but their front seven on defense is so good. And you added CeeDee Lamb to Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. On top of that, you still have Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. Dak Prescott, I hate saying this, but Dak Prescott was very good last year. I think the $64,000 question, proverbially speaking, is Mike McCarthy good enough? I think the year away and getting away from the NFL and will fix the staleness a little bit for him, although I'm hoping I'm dead wrong about this. Is Mike Nolan really that good of a defensive coordinator? I hope he continues to not be. And I think the secondary is a problem, but I will triple down on my statement as much as I hope I'm wrong that I think Dallas is the best team in the NFC. So I was losing this game as well as the next Cowboys game as a teaser.
After that rant, I thought for sure you had us beating him.
All right. So that basically puts us both, I think, at 3-5 for halfway through the season.
I have us at 4-4.
4-4. Yes. Sorry. Okay. That puts us in the quarter 3. So then we go on the other side of the second half of the season, go at Detroit, home against the Bengals of Cincinnati, against the Cowboys on fucking Thanksgiving Day, and then at the Steelers. I'm going to go 1-3, and I'm going to let you start talking.
Yeah, I got 1-3 as well. This is actually my favorite part of the whole schedule because I was looking at the Lions and Rams. I was going to say this about the Giants too, but held off because I think it's this part's more fun. Somewhere in Detroit, 2 guys are on a podcast right now, and they're like, "Oh, the Redskins."
Yes, they are.
That's
our one. That's our one right there.
That's our one win. So I think we lose to the Lions. I think Stafford's going to come back and have a pretty decent year. I've always really liked Stafford. probably just because of his massive arm. Dude can throw the ball for miles. Um, I think we'll beat the Bengals. Um, I know they obviously have Burrow now. I just think they have a long way to go as a team. Plus, it's at FedEx in, I don't know, that's going to be November. So you're looking at about, cool 10,000 fans in the stadium. I'm guessing the Cincinnati fans won't travel. So that'll be kind of like a dead game. And we're going to like sneak some random win, which is going to hurt our draft. Eventually, it's going to come back to haunt us. That's the game that's going to come back to haunt us, right? I think Dallas on Thanksgiving, man, that's a tough draw. It's a ratings monster. This is like the fifth out of the last 6 years, I think, we play on Thanksgiving Day.
We're gonna lay a turd on that day. It's gonna be a big fat turd.
We've beat the Cowboys once, and that was a glorious.
I was gonna say, I think it's the RG3 game is the only one I can.
Yeah, it's the only time we've ever beat them on Thanksgiving. We beat the Giants on Thanksgiving a few years back, in a meaningless game that I'm sure we all watched. But being like, I love Thanksgiving. I love it. I think it's my favorite holiday.
I would agree with the holiday part.
Yeah,
it's definitely my favorite holiday when the Redskins are not playing on it.
And now I gotta go eat Thanksgiving dinner at my in-laws, knowing the Skins are gonna get their ass whooped.
Yep.
And that's gonna suck.
Mm-hmm.
And then Pittsburgh. This one is kind of. I almost picked us to beat Pittsburgh. If it was in DC, I think I'd pick us to win. But on the road
in DC.
Yeah, I think
knowing that like the Steelers fans would still take over the stadium.
Oh yeah, I've been to a Steelers game at FedEx.
Yeah, right.
By the way, we go at Dallas, at Pitt, at San Fran. That's tough. Mm-hmm. I think Pitt wins. The reason I was thinking about picking them is like, so Roethlisberger missed pretty much 14 games last year. And from everything I've read, he's just drinking beer and hanging out.
Yep.
So who knows what their team's going to look like? I mean, it's Tomlin; he'll have them ready in some capacity. But I have us 1-3. So we lose to the Lions in some dumb, heartbreaking fashion because we probably should beat them. We beat the Bengals. On the flip side, we probably should lose, and we find a way to win. I think that's the game you'll see Del Rio being a good defensive coordinator. I think he'll confuse Burrow. Dallas walks over us in Thanksgiving, and then Pittsburgh. I have it as a loss, but that's the kind of game where injuries could go either way.
So we flip-flop our Detroit and Cincinnati games. I am also a Matt Stafford fan. I agree with you that the guy can throw a ball a country mile. My perspective on this was, yes, the Redskins beat them last year, but Jeff Driscoll was a quarterback at that time. But even when Matt Stafford was there, I think Detroit was 3-4-1 the first 8 games that he started in. So it's not like he was actually tearing shit up and they just, the bottom fell out after that, although they did lose every other single game. I kind of going through the rosters. One, I think Matt Patricia is just hopelessly and hilariously overmatched. I think he's just a joke of a coach. I think he might be one of Belichick's worst coaching hires this side of Eric Mangini, and even Eric Mangini was decent for a year or two. I think Patricia's just an idiot and he has no idea what he's doing. He's trying to be Belichick and he's failing miserably. I keep looking at the roster from last year and ask myself, how is this team better than a bottom 5 team? Are they substantially that much better? They, as usual, just did a bunch of hodgepodge signings. I mean, there's pieces, Desmond Trufant, Jamie Collins, Duron Harmon, okay, 2 former Patriots there. Surprise, surprise. And then you drafted Jeff Okudah with a 3rd overall pick. He's awesome. Do you really need a corner with the 3rd overall pick? How much is that going to fix your team? They ruined, I have DeAndre Swift's fantasy stock for next year, and they ruined it by drafting him. So I can just go ahead and write off DeAndre Swift as being a contributor in my fantasy team if a fantasy season happens. So point being, I'm less optimistic about Detroit than you are, or I'm more optimistic, I guess, from a Redskins perspective. I think Cincinnati is going to be kind of frisky next year. And I recognize I'm saying that about a 2-14 team. Joe Burrow's got pieces around him. Their line isn't terrible. It's not good, but it's not terrible. Tyler Boyd is good. AJ Green is still there. It's the best I can say about him. They've got a couple of receivers they get things from, and Auden Tate, Alex Erickson. If they spread shit around, just kind of let Joe Burrow go 4 wide, I think he can do well. And that's not even mentioning Joe Mixon, who's really, really good.
I like Mixon.
But he's really, really good.
Never want him on our team because he is more than a knucklehead, but he's good.
Yeah. He's really good. Their secondary, their linebackers kind of stink, but they've got a defensive line and they've got a secondary, which I think should be enough. I kind of like. I mean, I don't think they're going to win more than like 5-6 games next year, but I think one of their 5 or 6 wins is against us. I really do. And I think at that point in time, Redskins fans are just going to start flinging their poop at each other, especially considering it'll be going into Dallas week. Dallas already talked about, and then with Pittsburgh, like we ain't winning Pittsburgh. To your point, like this is the same team as last year. I think it's something like 19 starters are back from last year's team. They were 1 game out of the playoffs, and they're getting Ben Roethlisberger back. They won't have Mason the racist Rudolph as their quarterback anymore, right? So,
Okay.
Yeah. I'm surprised that guy hasn't worn a MAGA hat on the sidelines. Like that's all that's left from him.
I mean,
that's another
he pretty much wasn't Myles Garrett trying to basically make sure you never wear a helmet again.
I was rooting for Myles Garrett.
That Bengals game, by the way, is low key a very important game for Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to start a Haskins debate right now, but like he needs to beat Burrow. He really needs to. Like I listened to his interview with JP Finley today. It's actually a pretty good interview.
I did not get a chance to. It was on my list of things to do, and I didn't get a chance to.
It's a pretty good interview. I think some of his answers are definitely scripted, but you kind of get the sense that he's a lot more relaxed now, especially now that Tua is not on our team. But he beat out Burrow at Ohio State, right? Burrow transfers has arguably the greatest season ever for a college quarterback.
I didn't even think about that angle.
Yeah, and that's a very important game for him. And by that point in the season, we have the team roughly – I have them at that point at 4-5. You have them, I think, at like 3-6 maybe. Or actually, I think we're both at 4-5 because you have the Lions as a win. Like, you win that game, you're at 500 and you're building momentum. You lose that game going into Dallas. You lose Dallas. All of a sudden, you're at Pittsburgh. You lose that. All of a sudden, you lose at San Francisco. And, like, you're staring at – I think we're a little too far away at that point for Trevor Lawrence, but that will be all over the media.
If it's not Trevor Lawrence, it's Justin Fields. So
yeah, whichever one. So I think that Bengals game is low key a critical game for Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, I didn't even think the Joe Burrow storyline from Ohio State didn't even put 2 and 2 together.
It's gonna be all over.
Of course they're going to talk about that endlessly, but I just think just the fact that people are going to be like, this is a rookie and Haskins is the second year and you lost to a rookie, irrespective of the supporting cast and all of those types of things. I couldn't agree more from that perspective. I just think it's important from the perspective of like they've got to pick up some wins when they're on the schedule because to your point, as you alluded to in a second, the rest of the schedule is absolutely miserable and it could get very ugly very fast. And the Trevor Lawrence / Justin Fields / whoever the guy from North Dakota State is that people are talking about that they shouldn't be talking about, but they're going to be talking about, like that, those rumors are going to start, or those whispers are all going to start coming in. And of course, it's just going to be another quarterback shit show over here. But
so for the back half of these last 4 games, I have us at 5-7. That means we're probably in some stupid playoff simulator that we can still technically make it.
You have 5. I have 4 wins. I'm 4-8 on my end. I've got 1-3, 2-2, and 1-3 on my end.
Yeah, I'm 2-2, 2-2, 1-3.
Yeah,
5-7.
Yep. So then, I mean, the bottom falls out here for me, and I think my 1-3 prediction over the last 4 is very optimistic. And I think honestly, for me, it's probably just coming against that Week 17 game against the Eagles is where my win is coming. Maybe that Week 16 game against Carolina. So I will say with San Francisco, kind of building on the Dallas comment, I don't see San Francisco being as good as they were last year. I don't think they're like suddenly going to fall to a 6 or 7 win team. I think instead of being, can't remember what they finished last year, but if let's just say they were a 12 win team, they're going to be a 10 win team. Because I think people are kind of penciling them in like, oh, they're going to be exactly the same. Statistics prove that defenses year over year have the most variance. Like even if you take the same 11 guys, the way the team performs, year over year is very varied. Like there's consistency is not always there. Their loan addition, which everyone knows now is Trent Williams, but they lost DeForest Buckner, and I don't think it's just this wash that you can call it when they drafted Javon Kinlaw with the 13th or 14th pick. I think it was 14, whatever it was. I think to be very, very clear, San Francisco is definitely beating us. They'll beat us substantially. I just don't think San Francisco is the same NFC favorite that they were last year. Plus, people kind of forget that the last 6 games or so, San Francisco started to look a little shaky on defense before they got to the playoffs and kicked everyone's ass.
Yeah, I got us at 1-3-2. That defensive statistic where, it varies year over year. I mean, I'm guessing that just solely based on turnovers. I mean, defense is
probably is a large portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, Carlos Rogers drops 1 interception and our defense is bad. He picks off 2. Our defense could be great. That kind of thing swings a pendulum of what a defense is, because all those stats are based off yards, and if your defense isn't on the field, it's not going to matter.
Even the advanced metrics. My philosophy is, I think we anointed their defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, a little too fast. Where I think last year was a little bit.
People just like him because he's always jacked up.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year the first 10 games they were incredible. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They were phenomenal, and I think it was a little bit of everything clicking on all cylinders. But I need a little more duration to start saying that this guy is fucking Buddy Ryan. Let's cool things down a little bit and see where this all shakes out. So, yeah.
Yeah, my win comes from the Panthers. I am shocked this wasn't if this was a normal NFL season, I bet you this is week 1 or 2. I am stunned this game wasn't earlier. I'm also kind of stunned this game wasn't in prime time or something. Shout out to the NFL for not giving us a primetime game. One of 2 teams not to get one.
First time since 1982, and thank you.
Yeah, with the amount of primetime games, though, and there's, 4 a week? 3 a week at least. Bare minimum is 3 a week. The fact that we're not in one of them is, I mean, if you're a Redskins fan and don't realize how bad you are based off that set alone, then you got no business being a Skins fan because you're not realistic.
I was going to say that should speak volumes.
Yeah. So I got us 1-3. I think we beat the Panthers. I think that's the kind of game where Rivera will downplay it all week. But I think at that point, the team will really buy into who he is, and they'll just come out and beat the shit out of the Panthers.
That's a great point. I didn't even think about it. I can't believe I missed the most obvious angle about the Rivera thing.
Yeah, that's what I have. I think Philly's going to be fighting for a playoff spot at the end of the year, so not going to be good for us. Plus, it's on the road. San Fran's going to – San Fran beat us 9-0 last year because of the rain, right? It's in San Francisco. It's off. It's our 3rd consecutive road game. Probably off 2, which we're going to be licking wounds. Not looking forward to that San Francisco game. And the game on the calendar that is most intriguing to me personally is the Seahawks game. I'm so bummed this is in D.C. and not here. Shout out to anyone who's listening. I live in Seattle now, and my in-laws are huge Seahawks fans.
I was going to ask you that, do you live in Seahawks territory?
Yeah, we're not talking small fans. We're talking my brother-in-law, I kid you not, lives and breathes football. He coaches football, follows every Twitter account on football in the world, reads football books, knows every single thing about every single free agent that the Seahawks have. This is a football family that loves the Seahawks. They've been season ticket holders since the 90s before their first Super Bowl run with Matt Hasselbeck. They love it.
I was going to ask, are they're not established 2011 fans?
No, they're not.
Okay.
They're probably established John Kitna right before Hasselbeck Seahawks fans.
Okay.
So they're legit. But first off, we're not going to win this game. But please, just win. Just if you give me one bone on the schedule, just win that game.
The problem for me in this game, it's cliche to say this, but Russell Wilson's too damn good. I mean, I hate
he's so good.
saying blanket maxims like that. I think it's the laziest form of analysis that there is. But Russell Wilson is too damn good. I mean, that guy's a fucking magician in so many cases, right? He can will you to legitimate victories. I'm trying to come up with this preseason NFL quarterback rankings column just because there's nothing else to write about. And I think I was trying to rank all 32 quarterbacks. And I think I had Wilson as 3 behind, 2 of the more obvious names. So yeah, I mean, he's so damn good.
I am about 95% positive that my father-in-law likes me for 2 reasons. 5% is because I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan.
And 95% because you're from 757?
95% because my dad sent him a picture of me and Russell standing at half court of the basketball game because we're playing against sports against each other.
I'd buy that. I would buy that.
I think it's the only reason.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think the Seahawks are going to be. They're kind of they always are this way. They're kind of like the sum of the parts. Outside of Russell, no one really scares me on that team.
They're very wonky, but yes, the sum is greater than the individual parts. Is a good way to put
it. But like, oh, man, they're probably going to beat us. There's just no way around it. But I'm going to hope we win that game. But 1-3, we finished 6-10. Skins fans, the 2012 team won 10 games, and that team sucked. I know we had Robert Griffin on the magical run, but don't forget weird things can happen. Like, I don't know, read options where Robert Griffin fumbles the ball right into Josh Morgan for a touchdown on Sunday Night Football against the Giants. All I'm saying is we could win 10 games. It's going to take a miracle.
I'm not finding
6-10.
I was going to say, I can't even find 7 wins on this, short of a bunch of people losing their legs on the opposing teams. Because you have to say who are you swinging? I mean, all right, you can maybe swing Arizona because I think both of us, although I think you chalked them up as a win, but you ain't swinging Baltimore, you ain't swinging, in my opinion, the Cowboys games as much as I would love to. The Steelers game, I definitely don't think we're swinging that. Although I guess to your point,
dude, we could swing the Steelers.
I think there's a universe that could happen. If we're being, irrationally optimistic. I still think there's a split somewhere in the Eagles. And this is another stand for the NFC East opponent, which I feel weird about, but I think it was whatever Carson Wentz's MVP season where he started to blow out his knee. I think it was 17. Carson Wentz was the one in the Super Bowl, right? He was a wrecking machine, man. That guy legitimately terrified me. Then he blew out his knee. Then Nick Foles did the Nick Foles thing. And I kept saying, man, when Wentz gets back, when he gets fixed, he's going to start tearing shit up. He's never been the same guy between the knee injury, the back injury, and all that stuff. And I think the birds are starting to circle over there, no pun intended, in terms of and I think just the Jalen Hurts thing adds another layer to that.
What a bizarre pick.
It was just so strange. And he tried to what's his name, try to justify well, I missed on Russell Wilson, so
quarterback.
I miss on this guy. And I'm
they want to be a quarterback factory, wasn't that then?
And I'm I don't now to the counterpoint, everyone's oh, I feel so bad for Jalen Hurts. I'm I'm sorry, you feel bad for Jalen Hurts? You're going to a team that's going to win. There's no pressure on you initially. And the worst case scenario is you're either starting for the Eagles or they're going to trade you in 2 years for a second round pick to somebody who's going to look for you. I'm sorry, why are you upset? This is actually a perfect situation for you. And you're playing for a quarterback friendly coach. Those people were oh, I feel so bad for Jalen Hurts. What?
And the dude in front of you is brittle.
And the dude in front of you is brittle. I don't get it. That angle I didn't get, but that's neither me. I'm not a big Jalen Hurts guy in general. My wife is Alabama alumni. We've talked about that. And I said it since day one that Tua Tagovailoa was better than him from the minute he arrived on campus.
So 6-10 is what I think. I think our floor is probably 3-13 again, 4-12. I think the actual look. The 2012 team was really bad. And if people are listening to this, they're going to give me a lot of shit for that because we went 10-6 and we had RG3 and Alfred and it was awesome. That team was not good. RG3 was 100%. Just amazing. RG3 was just amazing.
That was a smoke and mirrors team. I will say people will like to hear it as well. Kyle Shanahan coached and Mike Shanahan coached their ass off that season in terms of the scheme that they put together.
We took the league by the storm with Griffin.
Some of those running lanes that Alf was running through, you could have run a convoy of trucks through in many cases. And I'm not taking away from Alf. Alf was a beast that year. But they pantsed opponents last year in 12.
Yeah. So my point is there is a world where we catch fire and win 9 games, right? We flip the 50-50 games and don't lose any of the games that we shouldn't lose. Or not shouldn't lose because there's probably not a single game that we shouldn't lose on the schedule. But we win any toss-up game, we win, right? So there's that world. So that's why I have a 6-10. I think we are going to be a much better coach team. You think about last year, and I definitely said, and I would have to go back and listen to what exactly said, but I am 95% positive. I said something to the effect of we'll always finish 7-9 with Gruden, something to that effect.
Something in that neighborhood.
This year, I think is definitely going to be a foundation year. I think we will be so much better coached, and it doesn't necessarily mean Rivera. I think a lot of it has to do with Del Rio. Like, dude, Minuski was so bad.
The upgrade between Minuski and Del Rio, also another thing that can't be overstated.
Yeah, and like Kerrigan's not dropping back to guard Sproles in the flat this year. I mean, it might happen once or twice, but like it's not going to be something you can count on week in, week out. I think I'm excited for Moreau to move on the outside permanently. We have some fun pieces to play around with. I think our defensive line's ridiculous. And if Chase Young can come in and Kerrigan can kind of be a little better now that he's got some, he doesn't have to play every snap basically, and Payne can continue to get better now and can get better. The defense alone, by the way, I'm not saying we're going to be a top 10 defense, which we all said last year before the season. I'm not saying anything along those lines. I'm just saying the defense alone is going to find a way to win us a couple more games than we did last year. We were awful last year. We had two head coaches. We had a head coach who literally said in his introductory press conference, it's not about the amount of yards or points you score. It's about the amount of carries you get. Like that was our head coach.
Welcome to 1965, Bill Callahan.
Yeah, that was or he didn't say more points. He said it's more about the attempts than it is the yards. Dude, like, no wonder Haskins sucked for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had the Trent situation. We had the Bruce Allen talking about our culture. Like, that team just was a disaster.
It's no secret a lot of people thought that Bill Callahan was the leak in terms of, like, the coaching staff didn't want Dwayne Haskins. And, like, a lot of people thought he was the mole.
Yeah. So, like, the fact that they went 3-10 with that team makes me believe we'll find a way to win a couple more games this year. But I don't think 6-10. I'm like, ooh, maybe that's a little too many. But I think that's where we end up at. I'm on record.
I'm not equating us to the 49ers defense in any realistic capacity, right? But
we're building it the same.
We're building it the same. If you also think about, remember the 49ers were like 4-12 the year before they went on this big Super Bowl run, and everyone was like, you put all these resources into the defensive line and you really only got one return investment out of it in terms of DeForest Buckner, right? And then you add Nick Bosa and everything's kind of comes together. I feel like there's a portion of that with Chase Young. So it's two pieces. So I think Chase Young is 10% of it, using your pie metaphor, in terms of the being able to unlock it. And I think 90% is Jack Del Rio will stop having our defensive linemen play patty cake with the opponent and actually just like go and unleash hell. If you remember, we talked about this sometime during the middle of the season where like Preston Smith made those comments like, Preston Smith, why are you doing so well? It's like, because I'm actually being used in the right way. I think that's exactly to our point about Greg Minuski and the difference that Jack Del Rio is going to make, that he's going to allow those guys to play up to their potential and unleash hell and be much better than they were. Because everyone's like, oh, you spent all these picks on on Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen and those guys. And what did you get? Even Montez Sweat to a lesser extent. And what have you gotten out of it? I think it's like, well, you got a bunch of nincompoop coaches who haven't allowed them to do what they should do. I think the back seven, to finish the point, like there's still a ton of questions. Thomas Davis is old. Cole Holcomb is one guy. And who am I missing? I don't even know who the third line, missing the third linebacker off the top of my head. And the secondary is an absolute disaster, not even including Landon Collins in that. Like wonderful. We talked about love Kendall Fuller. That's great. That's not a number one cornerback solution. And then you're talking about Fabian Moreau. And again, I'm missing somebody else probably. Oh, and then just the rest of the young guys. So great. Like I think it's going to be a mess. But I think, if nothing else, that part will be more optimistic. And then the left tackle thing, I still don't think people are talking about enough. The left tackle spot's going to be a mess. Like we got the guy we keep calling Cornelius Griffin playing left tackle. And can't even say he's going to be as good as Donald Penn last year. And that's nothing to be excited about.
Penn was okay for what he was. Not great, not bad. He just kind of was there. I'm trying to simultaneously look up Del Rio's defensive stats, like overall defensive stats. And you probably have these somewhere, but like I remember reading something along the lines of he has never had like anything worse than like a 17th ranked defense or something.
As a coordinator, I can remember. I think
as a coordinator, not as a head coach.
Yeah, one lousy year as the Raiders head coach. But to your point, like as a coordinator, I think it's all been in the top 12-ish at worst.
It's just I'm not not going down a pipe dream here. My point is like Del Rio alone with the defensive line, I think we win games. And Dwayne Haskins' blindside could be terrifying. You saying Donald Pitt's got me terrified. But Peters could come in. You never know. We got a lot of money to spend.
That basket.
Hopefully. So, did you read Ben Stanning's article this morning about
the scouts
about Charles? Yeah, the scouts takes.
Yes,
dude. Read that again about Charles.
Sadiq Charles is interesting. I don't think he's ready right away, but I think so. We didn't do a draft recap. I don't want to spend too much time on it because you can hear that from a ton of other sources. I will say this: my knee-jerk reactions to Antonio Gibson and Sadiq Charles were less than optimal. Knee-jerk reactions, right? But I think knee-jerk reactions from an asshole like me really don't mean anything and shouldn't mean anything in general, right? After doing a little more digging, I'm a little more lukewarm on everybody else's than on Antonio Gibson. I think the Christian McCaffrey comparisons are very lofty, but if he turns out to be, and I'm dead wrong, wonderful, delightful. That would be tremendous, right? Sadiq Charles was a nice gem. And what I'm trying to say by all of this, I trust Kyle Smith really very much in terms of his late round acumen. And I think this is where he makes his money. I think he's an excellent talent evaluator. I think there's a lot of guys where they're like, we like this guy. I don't care what the rest of the scouting world says. This is our guy. The guy from the interior lineman from San Diego State, the
Ishmael, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Ishmael, the money backer from Michigan. Those two guys, I didn't like the 7th round picks. Those were like whatever. I think.
No, those are washes anyway. People are just picking there. Those are all combine warriors.
Both of those guys were very interesting in addition to Sadiq Charles and Antonio Gandy Golden. We've talked about those. Everyone's well aware of those. But especially, like, I definitely think Charles is and he's not Jerron Christian where, like, looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. Like, I think there's a lot there. I think his bugaboo from everything that I've heard is, like, he's just got to stay off the weed.
Yeah, the only thing else – but he can smoke weed now.
Well, 1 or 2 times, and then after that, they're coming down on you.
Just don't become Trent Williams.
Yeah, just don't.
Although, is there any? Can you smoke now because of the CBA? Like, is there any penalty for smoking?
Yeah, there's some type. So first offense is you go into some type of counseling program, and they try to get you off of it. And then the second time, I think there's something else. And then the third time is a suspension, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like Josh Gordon, where third time you're basically banned for life.
Yeah,
still Josh Gordon's a bad example.
The only thing I'll say about the draft is, and this is not my take, so shout out to my buddy Chester. I agree with you. When we drafted Gibson, I was like, who the shit is this guy?
Yep.
The only reason I knew who he was is Kime tweeted like 10 minutes beforehand, I wonder if they take Gibson. Yep. I was like, I don't know who this guy is.
He was preternatural with some of these like choices, man. That guy's plugged in.
Yeah, he is. He's also been covering the team for 30 years, so I hope he's plugged in. But the thing about the Gibson pick, and this is where my buddy Chester comes in, and it also has a little to do with the tight end or lack thereof draft pick, is when was the last time one of our head coaches was like, yeah, I spoke to our offensive coordinator. He wanted this player. We laid out groundwork exactly how we would use him, and then we drafted him. Like, there was a plan to draft him, as opposed to like, oh, we just drafted David Amerson because he had some awesome one-off year at NC State, and we like his potential, right? So that's why I like the Gibson pick.
Although there's rumors that Shanahan really liked Emerson. There's rumors about that was a Shanahan guy.
If you read Shanahan's or look at Shanahan's draft history with defense players, it's horrid.
Yeah.
But the point with Gibson is like this, and not to say he's Christian McCaffrey, but like you can see how Turner wants to use him. And this dude is not small. He's fairly big, and he runs a 4.39.
Yep.
They don't call him a speed guy. They call him a big guy, yet he runs a 4.39. Dude's got tools.
I love the fact, to your point, that they target him. Like, this was something that the coaching staff wanted, and I think that puts him very well positioned in terms of what they're going to get out of him, the way they can use him, all those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other point my buddy Chester made is like, A, I thought that was spot on. And B, this is the first draft where we're not just drafting based off of any sort of need. We were literally taking best player available. I'm convinced.
I'm 100% convinced of it, except for maybe Gibson.
Yeah, but Gibson, True. Best player. So the way Ron described it is best player available for what our needs are.
Yep.
So he kind of wove him back in. But to your point, once you get into the later rounds, that's where Kyle shines. And the Charles pick, for instance, this is a day 2 guy. Some people were like, he might be the best left tackle next year, not in this draft, but next year he might have been the best left tackle in the draft. And yeah, so what? He smokes weed. Guess what? All of America smokes.
I was gonna say a lot of people smoke weed.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I'm curious if we would have drafted him if that 49ers trade doesn't go down. But that's a different world. Because that trade to Trent goes down, we draft Charles like 10 minutes later.
Yeah. Yeah. To reiterate the same point, like I was very little. I was not impressed at all with like the Ishmael pick and like I said, all the other guys afterwards.
Ishmael though sounds like he's going to be a stud based on
like
what
everything you read.
about.
There's a lot of people, including the Standig article, which to anyone who doesn't subscribe to Athletic, you should. Another great piece by them. He sounds like a nice diamond in the rough, if you will. But again, even though I don't know any of these guys from anybody, like I can't say enough that I think Kyle Smith and their staff knows exactly what they're looking for, and they went out and got guys. They're like, I don't really care what the consensus is. These are guys who we believe fit our program, and that's really the best thing you can ask for. So I trust them implicitly. I'm cautiously optimistic about the guys they took, and again, if the 7th rounders don't work out, then whatever. The percentage of those working out is next to nothing as it is.
Yeah, that Ishmael pick's also smart because Rui is going to get paid.
Yeah, for better or for worse.
And I'm not trying to pay a center.
One thing I want to make sure when we talk about with the draft, Redskins fans losing their mind, 1 for a tight end and 2 for Thaddeus Moss. I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, this tight end class stunk. We said it before the draft. We said it during the draft. We said it after the draft. This tight end class was not good. If there were 3 additional prospects that were actually good in this, they would have been gone very early on, and these guys would all have been pushed way, way late. Like, this was not a good group. It was really weird, and you were overdrafting talent just because the class was just so thin in general. And Thaddeus Moss, a bunch of other people have said it, and I've said it as well. If Thaddeus Moss's last name was Thaddeus Jones, he would have been an undrafted free agent, and no one would have thought twice, even after 2 touchdowns in the national championship game or whatever he had, right? Everyone's just banking on the fact that he is Randy Moss's son. He's nothing like his dad. He's nothing like his dad, except for the fact that they play football and he occasionally catches it. Like, that's it. To say that, like, oh, he's Randy Moss's kid, like, it's just beyond moronic homerism or beyond moronic, like, blindness to the obvious facts that he's not a good football player, or he's not a like dynamic tight end. That, like, I made fun of this guy from the Hail to the District account because he asked Mark Bullock to compare Jordan Reed to Randy Moss, and I'm like, you're comparing a Camry to a Lamborghini, and you're like asking, and you think that this is a thing. Like, you're an idiot. And like, at best, and I think a bunch of other people have referenced this, like, Thaddeus Moss is a strong blocking tight end, and if that's what it turns out to be, wonderful. But to think that we got some, we've got the next Greg Olson in him is like, come on, people really need to come back to reality here.
So I love Thaddeus Moss, and though I tend to agree with you on what you just said, but my buddy, I'm going to give 2 shots today. First one was to Chester, second one's to John Smalley. Oh, we're all in the same text thread. He has me brainwashed about Thaddeus Moss. He wanted to draft Moss in the 3rd round. And so he was pissed when we didn't draft him in the 7th round. Obviously, he's super pumped that he's, what are they called? Like, unrestricted free agent, yeah. whatever the terminology is. So look, I don't think, priority free agent really is. I don't think this guy. I have a lot of thoughts on Thaddeus Moss. I don't know how late you want to stay up because this could take me a while. I have a lot of thoughts on this guy. One, if you're a Redskins fan and you think we're going to go 10-6, look at this fact. A priority free agent is going to make our squad and potentially start. So you're 10-6 out the window.
Yeah.
2, I actually think he could be kind of sneaky good. He's not going to be Jordan Reed. He's not, running some seam route by some linebacker because he's a freak athlete like Jordan was. But he to me fits the H-back role. He's kind of like a poor man's Cooley. He's not fleet of foot.
Catch.
Yeah, but he's got great
run.
hands.
He can't run, sorry.
He can't run at all. But he's from what I understand, a very good blocker. Bullock was all in on his blocking in his article. And he's got great hands. Like, you can't knock his hands. So I'm excited about him. I don't think he's ever going to be that good. But it is exciting, A, to have Randy Moss's kid on our team. And B, if we get creative and find a way to use him in like 5 to 10 yard routes, he's mostly in there, but he can sneak out every once in a while. And we use him almost as an H-back, and he becomes a poor man's Niles Paul. I call my buddy Smalley Niles Smalley. He becomes a poor man's Niles Paul, then, like, great. We didn't draft him. He's a private free agent. Works out.
I love the poor man's Niles Paul. And that's kind of what I would put him at, right? Like, if he becomes that, wonderful. If he becomes, like – in my head, he replaces, like, who was the bums that we had at tight end last year? Or like Richard Rodgers, right? Like, if he displaces Richard Rodgers' spot as a body in camp, wonderful. I'm hoping he does that. If he displaces my boy Logan Thomas, wonderful. I hope he does that. That's great, right? Like, if he does any of those things, or like Hale Henches, which I don't even know if he's going to be a thing, like he was last year, and he, one of the guys who signed off the street and asked him to start playing on Sundays. Like, if he's replaces one of those guys, wonderful. I'm not rooting against him. I just think Redskins fans need to start realizing that this guy is not, it's not even Don Warren. Don Warren was a blocker, but like, it's like, he's fine.
He's not even Robert Royal. Remember him?
I do remember Robert Royal from LSU.
That guy was so bad.
What a random pull. That was one hell of a random pull. Do you remember Jamie Asher?
Oh yeah. Jamie Asher was great. He was before Steven Alexander.
Is he before Steven Alexander?
I think so. Or they're around the same time. Right. Wasn't Asher like one of Farrat's first tight ends?
Yes, I believe so. So you might be right, because I think Steven Alexander was a little later than that, like late 90s.
Yeah. Jamie Asher is like one of the first Madden like players I knew because of the Redskins. I was like, oh, Jamie Asher plays for the Redskins.
Jamie Asher from Louisville. I don't know why I remember that trap of useless information. That's my Thaddeus Moss rant.
I like the signing. I mean, we didn't draft him. We didn't waste a pick on him. If he comes in, he's good, great. If not, then like whatever. But the reality of being a Redskins fan is centered around that guy. People were like, why are we drafting him through the whole draft?
Literally every single pick.
And he was not drafted by any team. And then not only that, this guy, I'm not going to say he's a shoe-in, but I guarantee you he's on that 53-man roster. Guarantee it.
I would be more surprised from the numbers perspective, because, again, who's going to displace him? Richard Rodgers, Hale Henches, right? Like, I think from that perspective, it works out. And they probably signed him as a, pun intended, again, higher priority free agent after the draft comes out, knowing that he would be relatively in demand. Yeah, I'm not going to say I wouldn't be surprised either way. I probably would lean towards more surprised if he was released and not. But, maybe Jeremy Sprinkle balls out. I'll never hold my breath on that. But
cut him.
Not
your draft pick, Ron. Just kick him to the curb.
Yeah, I don't see. And I think you alluded to something there, and we kind of tying back everything we've been saying about this year. There's going to be a lot of dudes kicked to the curb after this year is over. I think
thank God
Ron Rivera is going to do a lot. I think this year, because, again, he doesn't get to know everybody, and he's going to learn a lot on the fly just because of the nature of the COVID world, plus just the nature of, like, your first time coaching a team over the course of a year. Like, our boy, the Troy Apke's of the world and stuff like that, like, get the fuck out of here, right?
I don't know. Apke's kind of a stud on special teams.
Yeah, not so much. Not so much anything else. But, yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Sucks.
Yeah.
Apke's the worst player in the league.
Worst player in the league. We went there.
It's either him or Trey Quinn. Give it a toss-up. They're fucking both awful.
That's a tough fight. That's a really tough one. I'm going to have to sleep on that one. Any final thoughts on the schedule?
I mean, if you look at sheer numbers, we have like the 27th hardest ranked schedule in the NFL or something like that.
I heard it was
dead last year.
Yeah, I heard it was like we're top 5 easiest, which is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I don't know if the NFL hates us or not, but like that back half of the schedule is not easy.
I don't know. Yeah, like where they got this idea that it's like easy. I haven't gotten that memo yet.
Yeah, I think I think it's a little skewed because we have the Lions and Bengals, and then the Giants twice. You got 4 dumpy teams there, but you also get the NFC West. That sucks. It's the best division in football probably, and you have you have a road game at Pittsburgh. Not to mention those road games are at Dallas, at Pittsburgh, at San Francisco in a row. And you draw the Ravens. So, like, it's going to be a tough year. And, on September 12th, if you call me or text me, I'm going to be like, we're going 16-0. Just my optimism at that point will be boiling.
Especially if we beat the Eagles in week 1.
Yeah, and if we beat the Eagles, I'll be like, Ron Vera, give him a lifetime contract type deal.
Put him in Canton now.
Yeah. But my only thoughts my parting thought with it is the only thing that matters is Dwayne Haskins.
That's what I was going to say.
If we are 6-10 and like Dwayne's actually pretty good, we just like cough up some games because our defense can't get a stop at the end or, whatever. It's a win. And the worst case scenario is we go 6-10 and Dwayne's bad.
Yep.
If Dwayne's bad, just fucking tank.
Yep.
So it really, to me, I don't really care about anything. It's all about Dwayne Haskins. That's the schedule.
To me, it's a lot of what you said. I think it's just this entire year is a bridge to next year. I think this year is basically a glorified 16-game audition for all the other 52 guys except for Dwayne Haskins, and it is for him as well. But it's much more about you, that what is the trajectory of his career, at least early on. I want to see growth, and I don't know what growth looks like. I mean, obviously, I think wins is an irrational stat to kind of expect of him, but is there development? Is he learning things from year 1 to year 2? Did it look like he actually put in the time in the off season? Are the Instagram videos that he's constantly posting himself actually accurate, or are they just influencer, well-placed, choreographed bullshit posts, right? Like
everyone looks good in shorts in the NFL.
Exactly, right? Like I'm worried that he's not going to spend any time with Scott Turner, but he probably is in some capacity. What does that translate into? I'm not saying that he should look like Cam Newton circa 3 years ago, but I'm saying that there should be some type of positive steps in the right direction in growth. I will take baby steps because even people then from last year recognize that he's going to need time to develop into what he is, and he's not going to necessarily be quite as pro ready. But I just want to see some type of positive movement with him. And I think for everybody else, it's really just you're playing for almost everybody else. I mean, everyone is just auditioning to be on this team as Ron Rivera cleans it up at the end of the year.
Yeah, you're right. I think the fact that Kerrigan doesn't have an extension yet is all I need to know about Rivera waiting to see.
Yep.
I thought for sure they were going to extend him and work some salary cap relief, let him kind of be the Chris Long of our team. But that hasn't happened. And I don't think it's because of COVID. I think it's because Ron's like, we're going to see what this team's about before anything.
I think everybody was on a proven capacity with him. I think exactly that, like everybody is. So on that note, we will call it there. So for those of you who have made it this far into the pod, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes and anywhere else you get your podcast. We're going to kick around, see how we can get on Spotify as well, because that's the thing that we've talked about offline. And there's a YouTube channel we're trying to put more content on. Yeah. All right. Till then, thank you again, Patrick, and we will talk to you later.